yes, they can have a bit of trajectory downwards and have some experience. But again, the problem with that is that it's an external substance, and often then we're not in control, and sometimes the experiences can be really quite traumatic. So it's like, you're not in control basically, whereas through meditation you're in control. So, and also even if you had some experience through psychedelics or something that was quite profound, then you're still relying on a substance to have that experience. And so it's just temporary, and of course some of those substances, if you keep taking them, they'll sort of damage the body. And so again, quite a number of people have come into this through that. That's okay, but I wouldn't recommend trying to use this as a vehicle. In fact, I've talked to a number of people who've gone through particularly the ayahuasca route, and I remember one man in particular, he had been seeing this very highly regarded shaman in Peru for quite some years, and after some years of seeing him, he realised it was a dead end. It was a dead end, so he came to Dharamsala and looking for a more effective way to move forward in practice.
But also I felt maybe this is why sometimes people are, like the coarse mind is shocked, or the conscious mind is shocked.
Exactly. But that shock is, you're not in control. That shock can go both ways. I mean, people often can get very traumatised by these experiences on drugs, so it's a bit risky,
I have two questions. How is this related to death?
To death. Oh, okay. So let me answer that first. So very briefly, I mean, it's a whole topic itself, but basically what's happening through the death process is you are moving down here and then you sort of come back up again. So it's a whole cycle. Like when you're dying, this coarse body is shutting down, slowly. And it completely shuts down, of course, when the heart stops, breathing stops, brain activity stops. But from a Buddhist perspective, what's happened is we're now down here. And so then the process continues where the subtle body is shutting down, which is all the subtle energies are withdrawing, and then we end up down here. And so this is actually at the actual point of death. But then what happens, of course, is then we move back up here following that into what's called the intermediate state, in Tibetan called bardo. So we take on then a subtle body, subtle mind, and then when we move to the next life, then we move back up here. So there's a whole process of death, process of moving down here and back up, which actually, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism, take advantage of that, because what we're saying is that in the death process we naturally end up here without effort, which means if we can stay mindful in the death process, we can take advantage of that. And so there's a lot of work in Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of practices to help us to do that. Because to gain access to that in meditation is extremely difficult, even for very highly advanced meditators, very difficult. Whereas it naturally happens in the death process. So if we can maintain that awareness through the death process, to when we get here, we can sit there and meditate. And in best case scenario, we can actually achieve enlightenment, so to say. But anyway, that's the process. We sort of go through that process. And actually, it's a little bit similar to our daily life, is that now when we're waking, we're here. When we go to sleep, we go not exactly the same as this, but deep sleep, mind is very deep. And then dreaming is a little bit more subtle, then deep, dreaming, deep, and then back to that. So we have that same sort of rhythm on a daily basis, but in a more sort of profound way in death and life. We just go through that same unfolding.
And second question is there a scientific
documentation?
Oh yeah. It's very interesting actually. And they're trying to do more and more scientific study on this, but it's not so easy. But what particularly is that the meditators who gain the ability to maintain, and it's a little bit like, when we're falling asleep, usually very early we lose consciousness. But we can train to maintain mindfulness while we're falling asleep, to be aware that we're in deep sleep, to be aware we're dreaming, and then aware we're waking. So that's called lucid sleep, lucid dreaming. So lucid dreaming is not difficult. Lucid sleep, a little bit more difficult, but we can maintain awareness through that whole process of falling asleep, into deep sleep, into dreaming, into waking. So similarly, we can develop the ability to maintain awareness through this process when we're dying. And then if we get to this point here, and of course, when we're here, the coarse body is shut down, so there's no breathing. I mean, the person's clinically dead. But when they get down here, if they can sit and meditate, they can stay there for days or weeks. And while they're there, this coarse body doesn't decompose. And so I think they're trying to do some studies on that. But of course the challenge is find someone who's in that state to study them. But particularly Dalai Lama and people like that are very keen to do scientific study on these people and see what's going on.
Even in the subtle mind, even people that achieve shamatha, maybe look at their brain.
Exactly. In fact, I'm associated with this project now with Alan Wallace. It's called in Italy called the Centre for Contemplative Research, and this is one of the things he wants to do. Not only doing, and most of the meditate is going to be for retreat centre for people who really want to strive for shamatha, and there's going to be scientists there as well who are monitoring through doing various EEGs and blood and everything, just monitoring people, the physiological changes in the body for people who are really progressing. And in particular, he wants to do like the EEG stuff of anyone who's actually achieved shamatha, what's happening in the brain. So they want to do that. So that'd be very interesting.
When you said getting lighter, so it is not coming back to our body?
Sorry? When we're enlightened, we don't disappear from the body. Oh, you mean if we're here, in the death process? Yes. Oh, there's a whole story about that. I mean, but, of course not going to come back in the body that's just finished, of course not. They're not going to somehow... No. But they will still come here in the world, but there's a whole story about that, and we don't have time for that. But they won't disappear.
But not in a human body.
Not in the one that just died, no, not in that
No,
body.
not in a human body.
Sure, maybe, yes, could be. Yeah, sure. Okay, let's finish there. We've run over time a bit, so let's again finish with the Shavasana meditation. awareness to descend into the body. Simply becoming aware of sensations throughout the body. And using the out-breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. Mouth and jaw soft and relaxed. And all the muscles around the eyes soft and relaxed. In this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And with each out-breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And simply allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of your breath. And maintaining that mindfulness of the rhythm of the breath. So in conclusion, we can dedicate all of our efforts here today towards this goal of cultivating a calm, clear and focused mind. And towards the goal of cultivating equanimity, free of attachment, free of indifference, free of aversion. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. And may the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So tomorrow morning with Maya, there was a request to do some 9-round breathing exercise, so she'll introduce a very simple version of that in the morning meditation before breakfast. Of course, there can be very elaborate, involving a lot of visualizations and so forth, but we'll keep it simple, I think, tomorrow. And then also she'll be leading again in the practice of resting in awareness. And then what we'll be doing for the Shamatha practice then after breakfast is we'll be combining the two practices. The one practice from today of resting in awareness and the day before of observing the mind. So we'll see if we can have that open, spacious awareness as the basis for observing our thoughts and emotions. So we'll practice that tomorrow a number of times. And then in the session after lunch I want to build on these 4 immeasurables that we looked at with what's called exchanging self with others, a lot about overcoming the selfish mind, replacing that with a mind of cherishing others. And then tomorrow evening, I want to look at these, what was called remember right on the first evening, the preconditions. How to set up our life in such a way to support this Shamatha practice. So that's going to be the topic for tomorrow evening. So that's the program for tomorrow. So that's it for today. So enjoy the rest of the evening. See you tomorrow morning.